Welcome to the Balanced Leader podcast, where we tackle the ultimate challenge for leaders, achieving peak performance without sacrificing your well-being. If you're ready to lead with clarity, energy, and impact without burning out, then you're in the right place. I'm Rob Hills, your leadership and wellbeing coach, and in each episode, I'll give you the insights, tools, and strategies that will enable you to thrive. Today, I'm speaking with Andrew Rooke, a former corporate executive who was running a fintech company with 550 people and $120 million in revenue by the age of 37. And then burnout forced him to completely reimagine his approach to both his leadership and life. Now, as an executive coach specializing in development psychology, Andrew helps leaders develop what he calls psychological maturity to perform at their peak without the stress and overwhelm. Today, we dive deep into the unconscious patterns that drive our stress, how to identify your triggers before they hijack your performance, and why taking full responsibility for your inner world is the ultimate leadership superpower. This is an awesome episode. I really hope you enjoy it. So without further ado, let's dive into today's episode with Andrew Rooke. Welcome, Andrew, to the Balanced Leader podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today, mate.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Rob. I'm delighted to be here and I'm really looking forward to the interview. It'll be great.
Me too, mate. Before we jump in, can you tell us a little bit about your background and what led you to do the work that you're doing today?
Yeah, sure thing. Well, in short, I was a corporate executive. By the age of 37, I was effectively running a fintech company. Responsible for about 120 million revenue and about 550 people all over the world. And we were doing, I started in transformation in that company and ultimately ended up, for the best part running the company. And we were doing business process outsourcing and wealth management for some of Australia's biggest superannuation funds and also some of the UK's biggest pension funds. And so, prior to that, I had a long career in technology and finance and investment banking. And and ultimately I burnt myself out age 37 in that role. That was a combination of just a really demanding role itself, but also the travel associated with that. I was in the UK every couple of weeks and that takes it out of you.
Yeah.
That sort of intense, hectic travel schedule and trying to lead a team of 500 plus. And so I ultimately burnt myself out and, mutually when we got bought out by a private equity fund, there was a mutual decision that I'd make an exit. And, that's the best thing that's ever happened to me in my life, apart from probably my marriage and son.
Yeah.
And so, that led me to this calling now, which is really to help people get the best out of themselves. And I've seen all sides of the coin, all three sides of the coin on that. Help people get the best out of themselves predominantly through their mind. And so, what's going on the inside of us is ultimately what we share and reflect on the outside of us. And the results we achieve in life are a total of what's going on the inner world. And so I love what I do. I've been doing this for 6 years now and I work with executives, business owners, and it's just a joy to wake up every day and roll with some great people.
That sounds amazing. What a great way to do life, I suppose.
Yeah.
How does that look for you? Is it executive coaching primarily? Is it workshops? What sort of work are you doing?
Yeah, it's a bit of both. So, we have, I guess there's a few strings to the bow. There's the private one-on-one executive coaching, with executives and business owners. And we also have a group offering that we have. It's a little mastermind. We run it every Wednesday morning. And actually what we do is adult development. And I'll talk about that more as we go. I'll weave it in. But it's a little different to most executive coaching and coaching. It's very much, it's focused on developmental psychology. And so we have the one-on-ones, we have our group masterminds, and I also do workshops as well. And so we've got a bit of everything.
Mm-hmm.
And we're moving into a space now where adult development's becoming more and more important because as we see AI sort of coming into the sphere pretty predominantly, really the only way that humans are going to have an edge is to develop themselves so that they can see beyond the capacity of AI and the capability of AI. And so I'll talk more into that as we go. But yeah, that's what we do.
Great. And yeah, we'll definitely come back to the AI. I've just done an episode recently about AI for leaders. And I was having a conversation with a friend this morning about just trying to stay at the forefront and not lag too far behind. So we'll definitely circle back to that one.
Fabulous. Yeah.
Was there a pivotal moment for you that shifted how you thought about performance and well-being? I mean, you talked about the burnout at age 37. Was that sort of the start of it?
Yeah, it was. I mean, I always wanted to run a company, and I was very driven by ambition, status, power. I don't want to sound like a megalomaniac, but it's just true.
Yeah.
You know, all the way up to the mid-30s, you know, I wanted more for myself. And the predominant way that, you know, I was going about that in the world was, through the career. You know, more money, bigger roles, more influence, etc. And I was very successful at that for a long period of time. But then, you know, every sword has two edges. And so if you push too hard, the other edge will come through. And so I guess I fell on my own sword in a certain sense because, you know, I was running so hard in this world of ambition that I had no gas left in the tank.
Yeah.
And it became unsustainable. And so the way that I'd worked pretty much all of my life became unsustainable with the degree of complexity that I was facing, you know, spending so much time at work, in work. You know, there was no time for family. There was no time for the marriage.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I was overemphasizing one aspect of life and underemphasizing the others. And, you know, ultimately, that was unsustainable. And then it came to a head when I was about 37. And that was the turning point for me. I knew in myself that, you know, I couldn't go much longer with the model that I was using for my life. And I didn't know what the other side looked like. But I knew that it was just unsustainable.
Yep.
And so, you know, I think for me, I was fortunate that we actually got bought out and, you know, I was already thinking about what's next for me. And so it all came together at once. But yeah, the basic answer to your question is I knew it was unsustainable. My wife was also telling me so as well, which is always a good hint.
That's right.
You know, sometimes, you know, my wife was out of the curve on that one. And I missed almost the first 4 years of my son's life. And, you know, I was feeling a bit of shame and regret about that. And so that was churning away in the background. And so, something had to change.
Yeah. If this resonates with leaders because they're feeling a little bit stuck, do you think it has to come to a head? Do you think it has to come to a pivotal event before people can change? Or can they sort of go, this is enough. Maybe I need to make a change proactively?
Yeah. Well, I think it's both. For most people, they usually run right headlong into it.
Yeah.
And they get into the mess and then they figure out, and this is kind of like me, right? And then they're kind of swimming and drowning in the complexity of life.
Yep.
And then they know that there needs to be a change, but they're not sure what or how. And often that's where people come into the coaching with us. And then there are some people that are more proactive and they see their own patterns playing out in their life. And, you know, they proactively seek a mirror or they make the change for themselves. So I think you can have both. But by and large for humans, what I see is they need to run into the brick wall before they change, by and large.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's been my experience and with most people I've spoken to. And I think also it comes as an age thing, perhaps as a young leader, we're charging ahead.
Sure.
As we get older, we get a bit more reflective. But by that stage, there is a high chance you perhaps have already had a burnout experience or you've gone through something that's caused this. So, yeah.
Well, one thing I'd love to reflect to you perhaps before we move to the next question is, you know, I'm just going to encourage the audience to think about what you just shared in terms of age and then actually recontextualize it a little bit to be developmental maturity. And so I'm just going to invite the audience to think about, you know, have you ever seen a 60-year-old with the maturity of a 30-year-old? Now, I'm sure most people would answer that yes.
I didn't want to be too quick to say yes.
I don't want to judge anyone, right?
Yeah.
And then conversely, you can see 18-year-olds that have got the wisdom of a 45-year-old. Now, what's the difference? The difference is their degree of psychological maturity. And so actually what's going on with people and whether they seek, to disrupt their own patterns and seek to improve their quality of life and go to the next altitude is a function of their psychological maturity. And so when we talk about adult development and developmental psychology, that's what we're talking about. We want to make, we want to invite people who might be 30 years old in age to step into a 45-year-old's mentality.
Yeah, I really like that. That's really interesting. And I'm wondering if awareness is the key component of that. Self-awareness is, if you don't have that self-awareness to go, oh, maybe I'm a little less psychologically mature as I could be, maybe you're not going to get that.
Yeah, 100%. Self-awareness is the key to everything because you can't change what you can't see.
Yeah.
And so, about 2.5% of our reality is seen at any one point in time. And so there's 97.5% that's unseen, that's unconscious. And so the biggest move you can make in life is to bring the unconscious conscious. And so I know a lot of people talk about, mindset, et cetera, et cetera. The biggest move in mindset is to actually make the unconscious or the unknown or the unaware parts of yourself, bring it into your awareness, allow them to be known. And that's all the parts of yourself, the parts that you like and the parts that you don't like. They all need to come along for the ride. And so, yeah, you're right. Self-awareness is the key.
Yeah. Is this something that you think people can do by themselves? And if so, are there some good starting points for people to work with to try and make that unconscious conscious?
Yeah. So yes and no. So the real honest answer, and this is not, self-promoting in any way, shape or form. I think there's 20,000 coaches in Australia, so this is not self-promoting. But, even for me, I have multiple coaches. And so to have a mirror that can reflect back to you what you can't see in yourself will accelerate your development tenfold.
Yeah.
There's just no doubt about that. Provided the mirror is more mature than you. And I see a lot of people hiring coaches that aren't at the level of maturity of their client, and they're wondering why they're not getting the change. So the first thing that I'd say is yes and no, and it's always better to have a mirror who can see the parts of you that you can't see. The second thing is, yes, you can do the work yourself. And I would just invite people to look at their triggers. So look at what's disturbing your peace. Look at what's grabbing you in life. What are you frustrated with or fixated on, or, what is your body involuntarily responding to? And they're your triggers. And every trigger that you have is an opportunity to actually develop your self-awareness. And so we want to get to a point where we're not moved by anything. It really doesn't matter what's going on outside of us. We are as calm as a lake, as calm as an ocean. And a placid ocean, I should say.
Yeah.
and from that space, we can respond rather than react. And we're going to respond with a wide range of choice. So let's think about this for a moment. The quality of a person's life is the sum total of the choices that they've made. And if you're reacting to things, you're not choosing. Your unconscious is choosing for you, and you're just playing out patterns from childhood. And so we want to get into this space where we're not really triggered by anything anymore, and we're just calm and we're centered and we're grounded and we're choosing for ourselves. And that's the way we're going to show up best in life. And when we show up best in life, we're going to have the results in the outer world.
I'm fascinated by triggers, probably because I have quite a few myself. So I'm wondering, and this has been a lifelong work for me, and it started when I was in the Defence Force and learning a bit about myself through mindfulness and meditation. What are some of the things that people can do to identify those triggers? Obviously, people must have a fairly good idea of what the ones that are right on the surface are.
Yeah.
But how do they go a little bit deeper to go, what are the ones underneath?
Yeah, I would say any movement in the body at all is a trigger. And so if we think about emotions are really just labels on physical sensations. So let's say someone's, experiencing what they would label anger. Now, anger could be frustration, irritation, jealousy, envy, or anger itself. Like, there's a constellation of, these emotions, right? But somebody's got for anger to exist, what's happening is there's a mental event around an external stimulus. So let's say you're in a relationship with another, like your boss, let's say you're CEO, you're a middle manager in a company, and your boss criticizes your work or says, you're late or this deliverables late or whatever it is. Then for most people, what they'll experience is they'll be making some sort of meaning around that. Oh, I'm not good enough. He or she doesn't love my work. I'm not worthy to be in this role or whatever it is, right? So there's some sort of mental event happening in the face of the boss, and the body will shift. There'll be an energetic movement in the body. And so for anger, often it's in the solar plexus or the stomach somewhere.
Yep.
And there'll be this pulse of energy. And so even if you're not aware of your thoughts and how you're making meaning, your body will tell you. And so as soon as your body's moved into let's say, an uncomfortable state, that's a sign that you're triggering yourself. And that's a sign to actually stop and say, oh, what's going on for me here? And in the example of, let's say, the boss criticizing your work, it's not about the boss. And it's not about the work. It's about you and how you're making meaning out of that situation mentally and in the body. And there's an opportunity for you to change that meaning and to not experience anger. Just experience, let's say, clarity. And so this is like, if we can get this work right, then all of our life gets to be spent in peace.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I imagine there's leaders listening going, doesn't that sound amazing? Because I feel stressed. I'm constantly stressed. I'm constantly worried about what other people are thinking of me. What are some of the hidden costs involved in that stress? And what can people do to sort of go, okay, I realize it's happening, but there's another way?
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, there's so many hidden costs in the stress, right? I mean, so in terms of health and physical vitality, that's a big cost. If you're running around thinking about stuff all day and ruminating and, having all these emotions, you're taxing your body, and your body's got to devote so many more resources to repairing itself and recovering. And so this is where people start to experience fatigue, brain fog, tiredness, loss of working memory, et cetera, et cetera. And it's a sign that your mental, emotional world, most people look to the physical. They'll go to the doctor and they'll just say, I'm knackered. And the doctor has no idea what to do.
Yeah.
And the reality of it is doctors are not trained in the mental and emotional world, and this is what's driving the bus. And so, we exhaust ourselves physically through our mind. And this is only really just becoming part of the cultural dialogue, if you like. Now people are becoming much more aware of it now, and it will become much more that way over the last 10 years. But yeah, traditional models of health are failing us. So that's on the health front. The quality of a relationship suffers greatly, if one of the people in the relationship is stressing themselves. You can't be present with your partner in relating if you're stressing about the relating, or if your mind's on work and you're trying to relax on the couch and have a conversation. So it costs relationships. And, 50% of people divorce these days. And the root of that problem is they're not present with each other. And both parties in the relationship are suffering themselves. And so, it costs a lot. For some people, it costs them half their bank balance and their peace of mind. And then, in the work front, performance, it's a huge drag on performance. It's a huge drag on team harmony. It's a huge drag on organizational culture because we're fighting each other. When we're fighting ourselves, we're fighting each other. And so, if you look at what's going on, if we look at what's going on in the world at the moment, we've got wars everywhere.
Yeah.
Where does that start? It starts inside the mind of those that are participating in those wars. Yeah. And so it's everywhere.
Yeah. And it's funny, why aren't we talking about mindset more? Because as you said, basically in our existence as human beings, mindset's everything. It's our perception of what's happening in the world, whether our boss says something to us and whether we go, meh, or we go, oh, this is the end of the world. This is crazy. How can he say this or she say this to me?
Yeah.
Why aren't we focusing more on mindset skills for people?
Yeah.
Because surely that's at the root cause of what's happening with mental health and other issues.
Yeah, of course. What great questions, by the way, Rob.
Oh, thanks, mate.
Yeah, I think just from my perspective and, having sort of run businesses and large projects before, I think the majority of society is still in the business case game and, wanting to achieve some sort of scientifically provable outcome. They want a business case for everything. Well, the mind is subjective. It's not an object. I often say this to people, like this mouse here is objective. I can see it, I can taste it, I can touch it, I can feel it. The mind, you can't. There's no way, or there is ways, but it's very difficult for people to link a predictable, tangible outcome with a change in the input. And so I see this in organizations everywhere, in cultures everywhere. And, I've seen it in my own marketing journey. How do you market a subjective shift with an objective outcome? It's difficult. But people are seeing it more. There's stats like 57% of your workforce is likely to be burnt out. I don't agree with that stat, by the way. I think it's somewhere closer to about 20%. And how are we even defining burnout? But besides the point, there's a lot of mental health issues running around at the moment: anxiety, depression, loneliness. They're the big three. And they're all related to burnout. To get to burnout, you've got to go through depression first. This is what a lot of people don't understand. And, a lot of men in particular, they'll be depressed for a long time and they won't even know it. They'll just feel tired. They'll feel flat. They'll feel a bit numb, like they're not alive, and they don't recognize they're depressed.
Yeah.
And so as a society, we're steadily waking up to this stuff, but it takes time. Yeah.
Is stress manifesting differently for men and women in the workplace? Is it looking different?
Yeah, I would say I probably don't want to buy into too many gendered stereotypes, because I would say, Rob, that like everyone experiences stress.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And actually stress, when we get to the root of it, it's a feeling of loss of control. So that's at the root of it. We might take a red pill on that later. I would say women are probably, as a generalization, better at vocalizing and expressing and acknowledging their stress still.
Yep. And
men are getting way better at it, but men tend to stuff it down. And, there was some research that was done a little while ago where, a lot of type A men, let's say, they die a lot earlier. So people like me that have been, executives and running big teams and in an environment where it's quite conducive to stress, they generally die about 7 to 10 years earlier.
Wow.
A lot more cardiovascular disease and a lot more, things like Parkinson's and Alzheimer's.
I had a question here for you around managing stress, but I kind of reflecting on what we're talking about, and I want to take it one step back, because I think if we manage stress, it's being reactive.
Yes.
It's reactive because the situation's already happened.
Yes.
But based on what you're saying, if we can focus a little bit more on mindset and what's happening to us in the moment, perhaps there's a way of circumventing the stress before we get to it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So any feeling of tension in the body is a sign of stress. Any form of tension in the mind is a sign of stress. And it's basically we're placing our control out there. The control has not been owned in here. Yeah. So, a classic example of, let's say, overwhelm. I remember reading a book on this with this example. So this is not mine, but it's a beautiful example. And is it okay if I share it for a minute?
Please do.
Yeah. This will give people a really good window into what overwhelm and stress actually is. Yeah. And also the shadow. We might be going a little bit too off piste, but let's say, imagine you're Johnny.
Good old Johnny.
And Johnny's Johnny. and Johnny's in his garage, and his garage is a mess. Think about most garages in Australia or wherever you are in the world. It's just like it's a cacophony of stuff, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And Johnny's like, I've really got to clean this up. And so Johnny's standing there, he's in his garage, and he's saying to himself, I've really got to clean this up because my mind is cluttered looking at all this stuff. And so Johnny makes the decision that he's going to clean up the garage, right? Now you can insert any work task here instead of the garage. So it's not about the garage, it's just a metaphor, yeah?
Yep.
An example. And so he makes a decision, I'm going to clean up my garage, yeah? And Johnny starts the garage, but the task is so overwhelmingly big that as soon as he starts it, he starts to think, I'm never going to finish it. This is going to exhaust me. I'm going to drain myself. I'm already knackered thinking about it. All these thoughts are going through his head. And so an hour in, he decides to stop. And so what's happened for Johnny is he's forgot his original intention, which is to clean the garage. And what he's done is he's overwhelmed himself with the size of the task. Nobody else has done anything. He's overwhelmed himself. And so then what might happen is Johnny's wife comes and knocks on the door. And Johnny's wife lovingly says, hey, Johnny, how's the garage going? Now, Johnny, if he's like most people, will turn to his wife and start blaming her for asking that question.
Yeah. And
so the stress goes up a notch. Now we've not only got stress from, the size of the task of the garage, but we've got, his wife asking a really neutral, loving question. All of a sudden, she's now the problem. Leave me be because it's not done yet. And so now Johnny's overwhelmed on multiple fronts. And his wife was never the problem, but now she is in Johnny's mind. And it's all come from Johnny's inability to stick to his original decision. And so Johnny's overwhelmed himself. The garage didn't do it. His wife didn't do it. He's overwhelmed himself. And so the whole thing with this, Rob, is that we've got to realize that we've got to be self-aware. We've got to be self-aware that we set out to do something and then we lost the drive and the motivation to do it. And so the only person we can turn attention to is ourselves. No one else is going to solve it, and the garage is not going to clean itself. And so that's the biggest thing to learn. That's how we can not manage our stress, but just not experience it. It just doesn't happen. You're just choosing. And if you don't want to clean the garage after an hour, you sit there with yourself and you go, actually, I'm tired. I'm going to go and have a beer on the couch now, and I'm going to be okay with that. There's no stress. You're just making choices.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because how much is that inner voice, which I imagine, as you said before, is a mix of, what's happened to us in our life from our childhood to our experiences.
Yes.
That isn't necessarily the nicest voice, let's say that for most people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how do we, and I love the point that you said there, you know what, I've cleaned the garage for an hour. Now I'm going to go sit on the couch and have a beer, and I'm going to be okay with that.
Yeah.
How do we get to that stage where we can talk to ourselves, and maybe is it self-soothing? Is it being a little bit more self-compassionate?
Yep.
But how do we get to that point where we can say, you know what, it's okay. I'm doing good. Well done. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. I love that. What another great question. This is awesome. So I think the first thing for most people is to be aware of what's happening. And if you want to choose something different, that's okay. Give yourself permission. See, most people will have this raving inner critic and they may not even hear it. They may not be aware of it. But for most people, it's running 24/7.
Yeah.
Right? And so you don't want to fight it. You want to let that in because, what we resist persists. So you want to let your inner critic in and you want to talk with it and you want to give yourself permission to choose differently in each and every moment. That's the biggest shift for a lot of people. And then to your point, you're absolutely right. Self-compassion is the next key. So if you want to clean the garage for an hour and then you want to go and just be lazy on the couch for an hour and watch Netflix and eat a bunch of chocolate, give yourself permission and show yourself some compassion. You don't have to be at it 24/7. The garage is going to be there tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So permission and self-compassion.
I'm starting to put together a little playlist in my mind.
Cool.
And, I'm a very practical person. So I'm trying to think for the listener, what are some of the steps we might take here? So I think we could both agree that it starts with self-awareness.
Yes.
So if you don't have that self-awareness and you don't see these things arising within you, there's not much you're going to be able to do about it.
True.
The next one, self-compassion.
Yep.
So notice perhaps that things are popping up for you and maybe take another look at it. And rather than whatever the story is that you usually put over the top of what you're telling yourself, maybe just have a look at it and maybe be a little bit more kinder to yourself. Is that a good starting point? What else is there that we can add to this nice little playlist that can get people at least started heading in the right way?
Yeah, 100%. So I think, the playlist, the first couple at least.
Yeah, it was a long playlist.
The first three, which in my mind is the almost like if there is any silver bullet, these are probably it. And life is complicated, right? So this is not a silver bullet for everything, but it's a great start. First, self-awareness. You've got to understand who you are and why you do what you do. What's valuable to you. Values, the way most coaches teach it and the way most people think about it, totally incorrect. Not even close. But you got to understand why you do what you do and who you are and what you value and why you value it. So that's the first thing.
Yep.
The second thing would be become really clear on why you choose what you choose. Because like I said before, your quality of life is equal to the choices that you make. And we have control of our choices. We don't have control of other people or the circumstances that we face. Classic example, Nelson Mandela. Classic example, Viktor Frankl. They didn't have control of their choices, of their circumstances, but they did have control of their choices.
Yeah.
And so that would be the second one. And then the third one that's just almost never talked about, and it does baffle me a little bit, is responsibility. So nobody else is responsible for you. You are it. In the game of tag, in the game of life, you are it.
Yeah.
And so when we take a position that we are responsible for the quality of our lives and the results we're getting, that's the most empowering thing you could ever do. Power doesn't come from anyone else. Like for a middle manager out there who might be looking to their CEO or their boss to give them more power, just know that that's not going to happen. You need to claim your own empowerment. And so that is, I am responsible for the choices that I make. I am responsible for the meaning that I'm making around situations. If I'm suffering, that is my responsibility. And I know this can be really hard this might be really triggering for some people, yeah? But I am responsible for the choices I'm making, and I'm responsible for the meaning that I'm making too. And so that's the third thing. And if a person can do those three things, they are well on the way to just a cracking life.
Yeah, what a great starting point. And I really like that last one as well. Choosing or saying to yourself that I'm responsible. And it's not responsible necessarily for whatever happens in front of you. There are things that are outside of your control, but you're certainly responsible for the way you respond or react.
Right. And I had a really, love that, Rob. And I had a really delicate situation in a workshop a couple of weeks ago where we were discussing, is mental health a choice? And for people that have been through mental health issues, that's a difficult conversation. For people who have been impacted by loved ones experiencing mental health challenges, that's a really difficult conversation. And, people can be born with different neurology. And so they don't get to choose, let's say, whether they're, affected by bipolar or they're naturally more depressive than other people. And so I've got a huge amount of compassion and love for people that are kind of, are predisposed to those sort of things. Mm. But what I invited the group to think about is, well, that is what it is. And, people come into these circumstances and challenges in life. And like you said, it's, well, what do I do with that? And so, it's really, for me, it's like there is a possibility, even if you are genetically predisposed or if you have tragic circumstances in life, it's what you do with it. And in the psychological world, they talk about post-traumatic stress disorder. Yeah, I'm not a fan. Mm. What about post-traumatic growth order? Mm. Because I'm telling you that I've seen a lot of people that have had a lot of trauma in life, and they're unbelievably resilient, incredible human beings. And we do not talk about that at all. And so it's an empowering way to be in life.
Yeah, and I totally agree. And there's oftentimes I remind myself when I'm facing a difficult situation that someone else has been through this and that they've gotten through it.
Yeah.
And if someone can do that, anyone can do that, because we all have the capability within us. It's finding the right tools, the right mentors, the right guidance to help them get to that point.
Exactly. And so this last segment is said totally with 100% love to anyone that's going through challenges right now. And, I just want to say there's totally hope that you're going to come out the other side. I've seen it with hundreds and hundreds of people. So, big love to your listeners.
Yeah, amazing. Andrew, what's one small daily practice that you personally swear by for keeping yourself grounded and keeping yourself in this great frame of mind?
Yeah, cool. Okay. I might give a couple if that's okay.
Please do.
One is just taking the perspective that, we have one life and the quality of that is up to us. And one of my mentors many, many years ago, Paul Check, is a fabulous guy in the States. He's coached some amazing people. He said, don't look outside yourself for things like your purpose, because the reality of it is, there'll never be another Rob on this planet, ever. The universe never creates two of anything. Even identical twins are different.
Yep.
And so you are it. You are your purpose. It's not to go to an orphanage and help 1,000 kids. You are your purpose. Stop looking for it everywhere else. And so life is to be lived at the fullest in every moment. And, why bother suffering yourself? So that would be item number one.
Yeah.
And then item number two would be the biggest game changer for me. And also with my clients that I've observed over the last few years is proper meditation. And so, meditation is active. It's not passive. Meditation is not mindfulness either. Mm-hmm. And so we've talked a lot about, let's say mindfulness and self-awareness in the first half of this podcast, or the first 3/4 of the podcast. To be mindful and aware of your thoughts is first step. And then with meditation, to go beyond your thoughts and to have none at all is to just experience bliss constantly. And, if we're able to be in that state, you are operating at your peak 24/7. And so that for me, I've observed personally and with clients as being the biggest game changer. And a practical tip for people is that, in the meditation space, there's like 1,000 different ways to do it. Every person's going to have their way that works for them. But meditation done well is to get beyond thoughts and to have none. When you get to that space, you're free. So that would be the second thing.
Wow. Andrew, I had a long list of questions, and we've even said things during this podcast that we're going to come back to. We haven't done it. Is there anything we didn't cover off that you kind of want to mention quickly before we wrap up today?
No, I think we're cool, but I would say that this work, it takes a while to get for a lot of people into the space where they're ready to do this work. But I would just encourage people that are listening, if this has resonated for you, chances are you're ready. And if it hasn't, that's okay. Chances are you're not ready yet, and that's perfectly fine. This work is I believe the greatest work that one can do in life. And so that would probably be the only thing that I'd leave people with. And if we've got more questions, I'm happy to come back. If you want me to come back, Rob, yeah.
Yeah, 100%. We'll definitely get you back. If people want to connect more with you and find out more about what you're doing, how can they do that?
Yeah, sure thing. So probably, I'm most active on LinkedIn. So, if people have access to the LinkedIn platform, private message me or connect with me on LinkedIn. My website's Andrew Rooke, ROOKE.com. You can find me there. Email me, andrew@andrewrooke.com. I can share the details with you, or send me a message on Facebook or Instagram. I'm less active on those platforms, but still there. And so, just reach out and, feel free to have a chat. No obligation. I'm happy to help where I can. So, thanks for the opportunity, Rob.
Yeah, awesome. Andrew, this has been such a great conversation. I kind of feel like it's been a little bit of self-therapy for me. I had a list of questions, but we took it in a different way. And I think there is so much value here for people. So really appreciate your time and really appreciate what you're putting out into the world, mate. Thank you so much.
Yeah, likewise. Just back to you. I appreciate your time. I appreciate the invitation. You're doing great stuff here. The world needs more of this, more balanced leaders. So thank you so much, Rob. Yeah.
Thanks, mate. Appreciate it.